History books have lied to you, or at least they haven't told you the whole truth. When you think of the Industrial Revolution, you picture roaring fires and hissing steam pushing massive pistons, right? But what if I told you that the machine that changed the world didn't run on the power of steam at all? In fact, the steam was just a decoy. The real muscle behind the modern world wasn't a hot gas expanding. It was absolutely nothing, a void, a vacuum, an empty space that summoned a hidden power terrifying enough to crush steel. We walk through life ignoring the most powerful forces simply because we can't see them. It's like standing at the bottom of an ocean and forgetting the water is there. You are currently carrying a weight on your shoulders that would crush a car, yet you feel light as a feather. This atmospheric ocean is the invisible giant that has been waiting for billions of years for someone to notice it. It's not magic. It's a law of nature that, once broken, unleashes a crushing force that can either destroy us or build civilizations. Today, we are going to peel back the curtain on the greatest magic trick in history. We aren't just talking about old engines. We are talking about how a simple emptiness, a vacuum, tricked the sky into doing our heavy lifting. By the end of this, you won't just understand how an engine works. You'll see the air around you differently. You'll understand that the greatest strength often comes not from pushing harder, but from creating the space for the universe to push for you. Let's dive into the science of the heavy sky. Imagine for a second that you're a little crab scuttling across the dark, sandy floor of the Pacific Ocean. You don't feel the massive weight of the water above you, do you? It's just your home. Well, here's the kicker. Humans are exactly like that crab, but instead of water, we live at the very bottom of a massive atmospheric ocean. We walk around thinking air is nothing, just empty space. But that's the biggest illusion of our lives. There is a heavy, invisible weight stacking up miles above our heads, pressing down on us every single second of the day. If you could see this hidden power, it would look like a giant column of air stretching from the top of your head all the way to the edge of outer space. That column isn't light as a feather. It actually weighs about 7 pounds for every single square inch of your body. Think about that. It's like having a medium-sized bowling ball resting on every inch of your skin, from your nose to your toes. It sounds terrifying, right? A crushing force that should flatten us like a pancake, yet we stroll through the park without a care in the world. The only reason we aren't crushed into dust is because our bodies are brilliant machines designed to push back. We have an internal pressure that matches the outside world perfectly, creating a delicate balance that keeps us safe and sound. But here is where things get really interesting and a little dangerous. What happens if you take away that internal push? What happens if you remove the air from the inside and let the sky have its way? That's when the atmospheric ocean reveals its true, terrifying strength, a strength that some very clever people figured out how to harness. Think of water molecules not as a liquid, but as people packed into a crowded elevator in a busy office building. Everyone is shoulder to shoulder, unable to move an inch, just waiting for the doors to open. That is water in its liquid state, dense, heavy, and compact. But when you add heat, it's like those elevator doors ding open directly into a massive, empty football stadium. Suddenly, everyone sprints out, spreading far and wide to fill every single seat in the stands. That is the true power of steam. It isn't just about getting hot, it is about a desperate, explosive need for expansion. To truly grasp the scale of this invisible giant, picture a simple 1-liter jug of milk sitting on your kitchen counter. If you boiled that single jug until every drop turned to steam, it wouldn't just fill another jug or two. No, it would explode outward to fill 700 milk jugs. Imagine trying to stack 700 jugs in your kitchen. That is enough volume to fill about 4 standard refrigerators from top to bottom. That is the magic ratio that changed history. One tiny, humble unit of water transforming into a massive cloud of raw energy. This massive expansion is impressive, sure, but the real trick isn't making the steam. It's what happens when you decide to take it away. If you let that steam fill a giant metal tank and then suddenly cool it down, it wants to shrink back to that single tiny jug of water instantly. It leaves behind a massive empty space, a void where absolutely nothing exists. And remember that heavy atmospheric ocean we talked about earlier? It absolutely hates an empty space, and it will do anything to smash its way back in. Picture a giant playground seesaw, but instead of kids, you have a massive pump on one side and a piston on the other. The pump side is naturally heavier, so gravity pulls it down, lifting the piston up into the air without any effort at all. As that piston rises, the cylinder underneath it fills with steam, just like a deep breath filling a lung. But here is the secret. The steam isn't pushing anything up. It's just lazily filling the space created by that heavy pump. It's a gentle, quiet moment before the storm, a perfect balance waiting to be broken. Now, imagine a sudden splash of cold water sprayed right into that hot, steam-filled cylinder. Remember our magic ratio? In a split second, that massive cloud of steam panics and shrinks back down into a tiny puddle of water. It goes from filling the room to fitting in a cup, leaving behind a massive empty void, a vacuum. It's like popping a balloon, but instead of air rushing out, the space inside just vanishes. This sudden collapse creates a hole in the world that nature absolutely despises. And that hidden power of the sky takes notice immediately. This is where the atmospheric ocean finally gets its revenge. With nothing inside the cylinder to push back, the weight of the sky slams that piston down with a terrifying, crushing force. It isn't the steam doing the work, it is the air itself, miles of it, hammering down to fill the empty space. This violent, downward stroke pulls the seesaw, lifting the water from the mine on the other side. It's a brilliant trick, using the weight of the sky to do the heavy lifting, but this beast was hungry and incredibly inefficient. Imagine you want to take a relaxing hot bath after a long day. You fill the tub with boiling water and jump in, but here is the catch. To drain it, you have to freeze that water into a solid block of ice instantly. Then, for your next bath, you have to melt that ice and boil the water all over again in the same freezing cold tub. Now, imagine doing this exhausting, impossible task 12 times every single minute. That sounds like absolute madness, right? That madness is exactly how the first steam engines worked. The metal cylinder had to be hot enough to keep the steam as a gas, but then it had to be instantly cooled down with water to create that vacuum we talked about. It was a constant battle of hot versus cold, a thermal tug-of-war that wasted a staggering amount of energy. The engine spent most of its time just reheating its own metal skin, fighting against the temperature change rather than doing useful work. Because of this design flaw, the Newcomen engine was a fuel-eating monster. It devoured mountains of coal just to keep moving, wasting about 99% of the heat it generated. It was like trying to fill a bucket with a giant hole in the bottom. You could do it, but the cost was astronomical. The world needed that power, but it couldn't afford the price tag of such an inefficient beast. Someone had to find a way to stop the waste and tame the invisible giant without feeding it a forest every hour. James Watt looked at this hungry beast and realized the problem wasn't the steam itself, but the temperature battle inside. He asked a simple question: why cool down the entire house just to freeze one single room? His solution was brilliant in its simplicity. He added a sidecar to the engine. Instead of cooling the massive main cylinder, he let the steam escape into a separate little box to condense. This way, the main cylinder stayed scorching hot, ready for the next breath of steam, while the cold work happened quietly next door. By separating the hot from the cold, Watt created a thermal barrier that changed the game forever. The main cylinder remained hot, never wasting precious energy reheating itself, while the separate condenser stayed icy cold, instantly turning steam back into water to create that vacuum. It was like having your cake and eating it too, constant heat for power, constant cold for the suction. This simple tweak stopped the engine from fighting its own design and allowed it to focus all its energy on the heavy lifting. Suddenly, the fuel-eating monster went on a strict diet, becoming lean and incredibly efficient. Before this, steam engines were stuck living at coal mines because they were too expensive to run anywhere else where fuel wasn't free. But with Watt's upgrade, the engine could finally travel. It could power factories, textile mills, and eventually entire cities far from the coal pits. The invisible giant was no longer chained to the ground, it was ready to move the world. But it needed one final evolution to truly wake up. Imagine riding a bicycle up a steep hill. When you push down on the pedals, it's a jerky, uneven motion. Push, pause, push, pause. But the heavy wheel keeps spinning smoothly, even when your feet are resetting for the next push. That heavy wheel acts like a mechanical battery, storing the energy from your push and releasing it slowly to keep you moving forward. This simple idea was the final piece of the puzzle for the steam engine. The early engines were like a giant, clumsy foot stomping up and down, thump, thump, thump. Great for pumping water out of a mine, but terrible for running delicate machinery in a factory. By adding a massive, heavy flywheel, that jerky up and down motion was transformed into a smooth, continuous rotation. The flywheel absorbed the violent power of the piston and turned it into a steady, reliable hum. Suddenly, the engine wasn't just a pump, it was a universal power source. It could spin gears, turn shafts, and drive the complex machinery of the Industrial Revolution. Factories could now run day and night, powered by the invisible giant that had been tamed into a smooth, rhythmic heartbeat. The world was no longer limited by muscle or wind. It had a tireless, mechanical heart that could beat forever. You might look at your smartphone or a sleek electric car and think the age of steam is ancient history, dead and buried with the dinosaurs. But here is the twist that will blow your mind. We never actually left the steam age. Look at a massive nuclear power plant, a coal plant, or even a futuristic concentrated solar farm. What are they really doing? They are just incredibly complicated, expensive ways to boil water. We are still using that same magic ratio, that same explosive expansion, to turn turbines and light up our cities. We just found fancier ways to build the fire, but the invisible giant is still the one keeping the lights on. So, here is my challenge to you. In your own life, are you acting like that old, inefficient Newcomen engine, burning all your fuel just to stay in the same spot? Or are you ready to build your own condenser and stop wasting your energy? Scroll down and tell me in the comments. What is the one area of your life where you feel like you're grinding too hard and need to work smarter? I want to hear your story, and if you are ready to stop fighting the pressure and start using it to build your empire, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications right now. We are just scratching the surface of these hidden laws, and trust me, you don't want to be left in the cold. The sky is heavy, my friends. Let it work for you.